Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to another Nacho Tuesday. And today I have Tom here with Forecastr. And without further ado, we'd love if you can introduce yourself and what you guys do over there.
Hey, Andy. Yeah, thrilled to be here. So Forecastr is a financial planning platform built specifically for startups. It gives founders and operators institutional quality financial models without needing a full-time CFO, covering everything from fundraising models and ARR forecasting to scenario planning and investor reporting. The platform is used by hundreds of early stage companies from pre-seed through Series B and integrates with the tools founders already use, your accounting systems like QuickBooks Online and Xero, your CRMs like HubSpot, Salesforce, and payroll. So the model stays connected to real data rather than living in a vacuum. On the personal side, I joined Forecastr a little over a year ago, and I was early at Carta, which is the cap table management platform. And we were taking cap table data out of spreadsheets and putting it into software, because then when it's in software, it's more manageable in terms of analytics, benchmarking, generated accounting tools and reports. And Forecastr is doing a similar thing with finance data. It's taking your company's finance data that's living in a spreadsheet, which typically gets big and bloated, and there's 50 tabs, and there's circular references, and then there's if-then errors. And we take that data, import it into software, modern software, that makes it more manageable for analytics, for benchmarking, and then for AI integrations. We have an Anthropic integration. You can use Claude to access your data on Forecastr, which just turbocharges your finance function.
Yep. Yeah, and you're based out of Hawaii primarily, right? Tell us about the tech scene out there and the work-life balance that you guys get. I'm kind of jealous a little bit right now.
True. So I'm recording this from Virginia currently, but normally I'm in Honolulu, Hawaii. And my wife and I, we were in the Bay Area working in the tech industry for about 10 years and started family planning. And over COVID, Hawaii was our escape. And we would go to the Big Island, we'd go to Maui, we'd go to Oahu, and we fell in love with this small town called Kailua on the windward shore of Oahu. We're both working remote for tech companies. And I was like, well, maybe we should just move here and give it a go. So we moved to Hawaii 4 years ago, and it's a very special place. And there is a very small tech industry in Hawaii. There's two unicorns. There's one called Privateer, and it's a satellite company that sells geospatial data. That's based in Maui. Alex Fielding is CEO. And the other is called OneBrief, which uses AI tools for the military for command and control structures for like big operations and all the documentation. It does all the streamlining to take like a planning process for, divisions and battalions that might take months to plan and cut that in half. Wow. And there's a incubator called Blue Startups, which is a top 20 incubator accelerator in the whole country, based in Honolulu. And what's cool is if you get into the program, they make you move to Hawaii, so you live there for a few months in order to take the check and be a part of the mentor community. And then they have demo days in Honolulu and San Francisco and New York. So it's still very much plugged into the mainland. So it's a really special place, and there's a lot happening in tech.
Very interesting. Yeah, I feel like they don't really have to twist people's arms to go out there. You want to try Hawaii out for a few months? Let's see how it works out.
Yeah. What have you got to lose?
Yep, exactly. So why do so many forecasts fail, I guess, to actually influence strategic business decisions? I feel like a lot of people just kind of look at their numbers but don't really understand them and get to that level of knowledge.
Well, I mean, most forecasts are built as a reporting exercise, not as a decision tool. So they answered what happened instead of what we should do next. They live in a spreadsheet that only finance touches, and then leadership never develops the habit of consulting the model before making calls. And forecasts that are too complex or too far from reality lose credibility fast. And once credibility is gone, people stop using them.
Yeah, that's a good point. I guess what are some of the other common mistakes that companies make when they're building or managing their financial forecasts?
Well, a lot of the mistakes are related to either the reporting function and looking in the past versus looking in the future. And one of the things that we're chatting about for the AI projects that use our platform is how do you forecast token usage or AI credit usage? Because there's this famous paradox called Jevons paradox that was developed by this mathematician in England in the 1800s. And what he realized was as the technology to take advantage of coal was becoming more efficient, and the price of the unit of coal was decreasing. He thought that maybe total spend would decrease over time, and actually total spend increased because there were just so many efficiencies that were unlocked by this new price point. And we're seeing kind of something similar for token projects, where, in the last 4 or 5 years, the price per million tokens has decreased by 98%, but the overall token spend has only increased by like 10x. And you see stories in the market about like Uber blowing through their AI budget for the entirety of 2026 in the first 4 months of the year, and other folks that are spending hundreds of millions of dollars on tokens because they didn't put usage caps on their engineers from using all these new tools. So it's challenging because with AI, things are moving so quickly. The 2026 budget that you built in 2025 is now obsolete. And so you have to update that. And if you're updating that as an organization, it's more helpful to use software to do that in a coordinated way versus using spreadsheets where things are offline and you have to deal with version control and too many cooks in the kitchen.
Yeah, pretty much every builder I know is always running out of cloud credits, and it's become an online meme at this point too. I need more cloud credits.
Yeah.
That's a good historical reference, though, actually. So what's the difference between a forecast that simply reports the numbers and one that actually helps with the decision making? Can you maybe walk us through maybe how Forecastr works to help with some of that decision making?
Mm-hmm. So a reporting forecast really looks backwards, and a decision driving forecast is built around the questions leadership's actually trying to answer. So when am I hiring? Who am I hiring? Whether am I expanding? How long runway lasts under different scenarios? Decision driving forecasts are scenario based. Also, they model what happens if conversion drops 10%, or if a key customer churns, so leaders can act before problems materialize. And the best forecasts have a clear owner who updates them regularly and brings them into weekly or monthly leadership conversations. What we see for our Forecastr clients is when a company signs up for Forecastr, they'll work with one of our onboarding specialists to recreate their model and their forecast in Forecastr. And then your analyst from Forecastr actually owns the model. And they get regular updated information from the CEO and key executives that might have pipeline data from HubSpot or updated kind of like hiring plans or payroll plans. And they will update the model so it's always accurate, and then have a monthly sync where they review this information. And then the executive team has the best available information to make decisions on a go-forward basis, making sure that everything is taken into account.
So how should founders think, I guess, about operating in uncertain or rapidly changing markets? I mean, we're one tweet away from entire markets being upended these days. What kind of recommendations or tips would you have for founders to kind of stay on their toes here?
Yeah, in uncertain markets, the goal of a forecast shifts from prediction to preparation. And you're building a map of the decision points you'll hit, not claiming to know the future. We always suggest for our clients to narrow their forecast horizon, at least do a 90-day rolling forecast with monthly updates. And that beats an 18-month model that is going to be wrong by month 3. It reminds me of when I was a founder, 10 or 15 years ago, and the investors were prepping us on building like 3 to 5 year financial models. Yeah. Where when you're coming up with what does year 3, 4, and 5 look like, and it's pretty much an exercise in creativity at that point.
Yeah, so a lot of 30-page business plans are kind of out the door now.
Yeah, the game has changed. They don't do that anymore. So we really recommend, start with a 90-day rolling forecast with monthly updates. And don't get stuck into thinking too long term, where the likelihood of it being correct goes to 0, basically. And then also you need to stress test your key assumptions early and often. If the model breaks, like when CAC goes up 20%, like that's a really important thing to know, and you want to know that before it happens.
So I guess what kind of inputs or assumptions tend to have the biggest impact when you're forecasting?
So inputs or assumptions that tend to have the biggest impact on forecast accuracy. So conversion rates at each stage of the sales funnel can be very impactful. A 5-point swing in trial to paid conversion will rewrite the whole revenue line. And also this is related to your particular business. If you're a B2C model or you're a B2B model, or you're like an AI foundational model where you're using like tokens or consumption-based usage. Net revenue retention, whether existing customers expand or contract, is often more powerful than new logo assumptions, especially for SaaS. And time to revenue is always important. How long does it actually take from contract signed to cash collected? That's consistently underestimated from what we see with our clients, and it will throw off your cash flow forecast.
Yeah, people love to get paid, but nobody likes to pay you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I used to have an agency back in the day too, and I remember just chasing invoices every single month. It was kind of stressful as a business to kind of plan around that. Some paid promptly, but some have some pretty aggressive terms that put you 30 to 45 days out or more.
Mm-hmm. And then it's a problem at renewal too.
Yep.
Most companies are signing 12-month contracts, and then the most sophisticated organizations have a process where the customer's team is working with either the sales team or the upsell team to evaluate where's the customer in their journey. Are they happy? Are they not happy? Is this an upsell or cross-sell opportunity? Is this a churn risk? To make sure people navigate that renewal, and then you lock them down for another 12 months or even multi-year if possible.
Yeah. So I guess what role should forecasting play in aligning leadership, finance, operations, and everybody together behind the same vision around where they expect to be financially and how they're supposed to be performing?
So the forecast should be the single shared version of reality. And when sales, ops, and finance are working from different numbers, decisions become political rather than analytical. Monthly forecast reviews with cross-functional attendance creates accountability. If sales is projecting 40 new logos, but ops hasn't planned for the onboarding load, the forecast exposes that gap before it becomes a crisis. And then, of course, leadership alignment. It happens faster when everyone can see the same model and argue about assumptions rather than argue about whose numbers are right. And that's one of the great strengths of using a FP&A tool like Forecastr, where the model lives in Forecastr as your single source of truth, and then you can do permission sharing with individuals across your team, so they can see the portion of the model that directly influences them, and then at the executive level, they can see the whole model. And so you're not dealing with like who has the most current version of the spreadsheet. You just log into Forecastr and you can see what you need to see, so if you're going to hit your number this month, in this quarter, and this year.
So how do you help companies move from beyond that static spreadsheet forecasting to the more dynamic scenario-based planning? Perhaps like what does the onboarding process look like for Forecastr?
Yeah. So we always like to start by identifying the 3 or 4 assumptions that move the forecast the most, and then we can build the sliders around those. You don't need to model everything dynamically on day one. Get the model out of email and into a shared tool where updates are visible and versioned. I mean, most of the friction in spreadsheet forecasting is version control, not the model itself. And then it's important for the organization to commit to a monthly cadence of actual versus forecast review. And the discipline of comparing what you predicted to what happened is what makes any model get better over time.
Yep. And I guess what type of faux pas do a lot of people have when they're producing their forecasting that you've seen across the board? People probably over-index for sales that they think they're going to get. What other common red flags do you see?
Well, when actuals start consistently coming in below forecast on the same line item, like that's a model assumption that's probably wrong, not a one-time miss. Cash runway shrinking faster than the model predicted, even when revenue looks on track. Usually a timing issue with collections or maybe unplanned expenses, like spending more on tokens than you anticipated.
Yep.
Sales pipeline coverage dropping below 3 times quota with less than 60 days left in the quarter. It's a revenue miss. It's already locked in even before it shows up in the forecast. And that's one of the reasons that having the CRM integration is so important, because for companies that have longer sales cycles, you want to know if there's a bubble in my pipeline that I'm going to be experiencing in the future months and quarters instead of just challenges right now.
Yeah, that's very interesting, especially when it comes to like the renewals, right? If you have a bunch that are renewing at a certain time and you expect a certain percentage of those to drop, you could have a huge drop in revenue unexpectedly at a certain point in the future. And that's not good. Obviously, you have to backfill that with more potential sales coming in the door.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. So I guess how do you balance, the hardest thing for a lot of business people, especially founders that love their product? I guess how do you balance optimism with realism when you're building projections and an operational plan? Of course, when you're at the investor stage, you like to show a cool hockey stick growth chart. And, I think investors like to see that too, even though they know it's fake. But how do you balance that optimism and realism, I guess?
Yeah, well, if you weren't an optimist, you wouldn't be a founder.
Exactly.
So you've got to think positive, but a dose of realism is important too, just to make sure you're doing a good job with preparation. So what we always like to say to anchor like your revenue projections to what's already in the pipeline or under contract. Everything else beyond that is upside and shouldn't be base case. You could build your hiring and cost plan against the base case, not the upside. And it's much easier to accelerate hiring when revenue surprises to the upside than to do layoffs when it doesn't.
Yeah.
Optimism belongs in the upside scenario, not baked into the base assumption. And that way you're not managing to a number you always secretly knew was a stretch.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. I always hope for the best and expect the worst, so to speak. Yep. So I guess what kind of metrics or forecasting models are useful for SaaS or high growth companies today?
So there's a lot of metrics and forecasting models used for SaaS and high growth companies. Some of the classics are the ARR waterfall, so annual recurring revenue and how that breaks down among new ARR, expansion ARR, contraction, churn. It's the clearest way to see the health of the revenue engine and not just the top line number. CAC payback period, so that's cost to acquire customers, and lifetime value over CAC by cohort. A growth that takes 36 months to pay back isn't really growth, it's capital consumption.
Yeah.
And then rule of 40 is kind of an old school SaaS metric as a North Star metric, which is your growth rate plus profit margin. You want to keep that above 40. It keeps leadership from optimizing only for growth at the expense of efficiency.
Yeah, and especially that churn rate too, just understanding how fast, people stay with you and where and when they drop off. So I guess how can better forecasting improve investor confidence, budgeting decisions, and resource allocation?
So investors fund the team as much as the business. And a founder who can walk through their model, defend their assumptions, and explain what they're watching is far more fundable than one who presents a number without a story.
Yeah.
And better forecasting means fewer surprises at board meetings, and surprises are what erode investor trust the fastest.
Yep.
And when the forecast...
Go ahead.
And when the forecast drives resource allocation, every dollar of budget has a line back to a strategic assumption. That discipline prevents the we spend it because we had it problem that kills efficiency at scale.
And it's good to show that you have a plan too, like you've thought through everything strategically, and you actually have assumptions that are backed by, like a real thesis, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
Nice. So looking ahead, how are AI, automation, and real-time data changing the future of forecasting and strategic planning?
Well, AI is shifting forecasting from a monthly finance exercise to a continuous process. Models can now update in real time as actuals come in without anyone manual pulling data. And the bottleneck is moving from building the model to asking the right questions. Founders who know what to interrogate will get dramatically more value from AI-assisted planning tools. Mm-hmm. And the most meaningful near-term change is scenario modeling at speed. What used to take a CFO a week to stress test can now be done in minutes, which means leadership can make faster, better informed bets.
Yep, good point. So I guess what's next for you in Forecastr? Do you guys have any exciting partnerships or features coming up?
Yeah, so we're doubling down on making institutional quality financial modeling accessible to founders who don't have a CFO. The goal is that any Series A or B company can walk into a board meeting with the same model rigor as a public company. And the webinar today is a part of the broader push to help founders understand AI's impact on their P&L before it surprises them. Token spend, gross margin compression, and agentic cost dynamics are the new headcount conversation. And the best next step for anyone in the audience is to get their current financial model in Forecastr and run the AI cost scenarios we talked about today. The earlier you build that visibility, the better position you're in for your next raise.
So I guess you've been around a lot of the different tech cities and whatnot. I guess what trends and insights have you seen, now that you've spent some time in New York last week for New York Tech Week, which was pretty hectic. Tom came straight off the plane to our event, by the way, so he was able to make it there. But they had plenty of events going on that week. But how would you compare some trends and insights you've seen across the different tech markets, including San Francisco, Seattle, and Hawaii that you've noticed?
Well, New York Tech Week is one of my favorite tech weeks in the world. There's a vibe. Being in Manhattan, taking the subway from event to event, riding on Ubers, riding up the elevators to like NachoNacho's event at Mr. Purple in Midtown, which was this killer roof deck. And on one part of the roof deck, you can see the Empire State Building, and on the other part of the roof deck, you can see the One World Trade Center, and it was dusk and good beats and vibes in the background, and everybody's having a good time. It was kind of like the best kickoff party that Tuesday night for New York Tech Week. So it was really awesome to be a part of that. And the Forecastr was a sponsor of that NachoNacho event as well. So what do I see regionally? So New York is a great tech town. It was really cool to go to some events with some older school New York investors talking about how they raised their first fund 30 years ago and they're now on fund 8. And it's just a completely new kind of dynamic ecosystem where there's a lot of people building a lot of great like vertical SaaS, vertical AI, agentic workflows, foundational models, kind of CPG, direct to consumer, a little bit of fashion, tech fashion. New York is just such an interesting intersection of these different kind of tech adjacent markets where you get to pull talent in to build awesome stuff. So New York is just a great place to operate. I've not lived and worked there per se. I have a Bay Area background. I lived and worked in San Francisco and Oakland. I was early at Carta. I was the 12th employee, was there through 1,000 people. And as you're all familiar with, Carta is a cap table management platform where we take equity information out of spreadsheets, put it into software, and it's much more manageable to do options, have employees exercise their options, manage full cap tables. And Carta's new tagline is they're the ERP for private capital. So it's not just startups, it's funds, it's private equity. They're at like $500 million in ARR, on $1 billion raised. So it's like a mega company now. But one of the wild stories about Carta Series A is they weren't able to raise in the Bay. They just didn't understand what Henry was trying to do, building this cap table company. But they went to New York and they got a bunch of term sheets right away because the New York market really understood fintech. And they were like, no, if you're successful building this like NASDAQ for private capital, this would be a big company. And so a part of the regional aspect of building is you want to go and understand what you're building. And ideally, like there's a lot of clients there that you'd be able to have conversations with. So like Henry loved building Carta in the Bay Area, but he had to fundraise in New York to make it happen. And in Hawaii, there's this awesome tool called OneBrief that is an AI tool that helps military command and control structures with large scale planning and documentation, like a planning process that might take months. Because there's all the men and women and material and supply chains and logistics and everything, like it just takes a long time. And so imagine being able to use AI to coordinate that and cut that planning process in half. I heard the CEO speak in Hawaii and he said the best place in the world to start this company is in Hawaii because so many of the US military Department of Defense branches have command and control structures on the islands that he can sell directly into the Marines, the Navy, the Air Force, the Space Force, and everything. So in terms of being close to your customers, like Hawaii is a fantastic place to build an AI powered, documentation protocol for the military, for the Department of Defense. So I would say just be mindful of where you're building, where your customers are, and where the capital is, because they might not all be in the same place.
That's a great answer, by the way. Yeah, because a lot of people sometimes think that if they're in New York, they just need, their customers in New York, raising money in New York, everything's got to be there. People in San Francisco definitely, if they live there, they think, their customers are in San Francisco. They think money's there too. But like you said, maybe your customers are in San Francisco, but you're raising money out of New York. Maybe your customers in Seattle, actually, because you're more enterprise SaaS and you're fundraising in San Francisco or New York City. So it's all really interesting how that works. But yeah, don't be afraid of checking out other tech cities and markets. Austin's another really good up and coming one too. LA is pretty decent as well, but yeah, especially Silicon Beach there. Never lets me down.
Yeah. We had an event in LA recently. It was a founders and funders event. And when you go to an event in LA, it's such a vibe because like people are more fashionable. And then the people make more of a statement in terms of what they wear, in terms of like the brightly colored hair or like the leather jackets with the studs or like, brightly colored dresses, because it's more adjacent to like influencer culture. Yep. And so you have people that are actively on TikTok, they're on Instagram, they're on YouTube, they're being paid to promote other people's products, but then they're also investing in other people's products and technologies. And so there's like a strong CPG culture in Southern California. There's a strong like advertising and entertainment culture that you might not get in other cities in like Austin or Chicago.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons I love doing like LA events, because you always meet a lot of characters out there, and they definitely know how to dress. They definitely have more kind of positive, happy vibes. Whereas like sometimes San Francisco or New York, people might be more to the point.
Yeah.
So yeah, everything's got its own ups and downs, I guess. But yeah, there's a lot of SaaS companies actually in LA too, but they do have that influence from the creator culture and that LA culture overall. They run a SaaS company, but they'll show up to your event being one of the most well-dressed people in the room. Yep. Or actually shorts and a t-shirt and sandals. You never know who you're talking to. So everybody.
I like the style decisions of like the Palmer Luckies of the world from Andrew Rill, who's like,
yeah, me too.
My uniform is Hawaiian shirt, shorts, flip-flops. That's what I'm going to wear every day, Steve Jobs style with the black turtleneck.
Yep. Yeah, usually those are the people that got the most going on because they at some point they said, I get to dress however I want because I'm at that level. So I don't care what people think about me anymore.
Yeah.
So I guess any other key takeaways for people to know about Forecastr and why they should sign up for your service today?
Well, I would say if you're thinking about finance projects, like there's a positive ROI finance project in your future, whether it could be planning or analytics, or you want to do some benchmarking against other comparable companies, like schedule a call with us because not only do we have software that can help you with those things, but we have fractional CFOs that can help you with custom projects. And we have Anthropic integrations where once your data is in Forecastr, you can ask Claude questions about your data. And then remember, AI hallucinates. So it'll give you answers that are correct 95% of the time. And then if you want 100%, correct set of answers, we have analysts that can QA and QC the data that's being generated by the AI. So like what we think the long-term solution is a three-legged stool. It's a combination of humans, AI, and software working together to solve your finance problems. And if you're only using one or two of the three, it's not really a complete solution. So we would just love to have a conversation with you, learn about your business, explain this is how we think about the world and how we can help. And then hopefully we can help you on your journey.
Yep. Yeah, that's a good point too. I think especially for finances, you should always have the human in the loop because you don't want to make an error. That's probably one of the most important things. Hey, we ran out of runway. Claude hallucinated a little bit and gave us a little bit more ambitious, optimistic runway than we actually thought. And a lot of those AI tools are known to be a little too nice, I think. Sometimes they should tell you the hard truth.
I heard a horror story from a founder that said, we've been using AI as a part of our forecasting and modeling, and later in the game realized that it was only 90% accurate, and they were making basically bad decisions based on like faulty information. So, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure in this instance, and get a human in the loop. Sometimes you don't have a human on your team that can do it, and then find a human in the loop that can help you and use a platform like Forecastr, and we could be that for you.
Yeah, it sounds like you guys have that level of service too. So, very excited about the partnership, Tom. Looking forward to seeing you next, maybe either here or in Hawaii. It sounds like I'm due for another trip out there.
We need to do a NachoNacho event in the Hawaii Tech Week.
Sign me up, actually. I just got to convince Sanjay, but I would love to do an event out there too. So I'm an avid traveler, and I love going to Hawaii. I used to go a lot more when I lived on the West Coast, but I'll be out there soon enough. Appreciate you coming on today. Everybody check out Forecastr. That's forecastr.co, correct?
Mm-hmm, correct.
Yep.
Forecastr.com, but we haven't launched it yet.
Oh, cool. Okay. That's an inside tip I just got. Nice. I like it. You could also grab it in the NachoNacho marketplace. Of course, we always have the best software products and the best partners. Feel free to grab it there or go direct to our partners. Thanks for everybody for coming on today. Appreciate you, Tom, and looking forward to seeing you here or in Hawaii.
Sounds good. Thanks, Andy. Thank you, everyone.